Many people look at blockchain or hear the word decentralized. They hear cryptocurrency and Bitcoin or Ethereum. I look at blockchain as a database of 21st or 22nd century. We are very much overdue for actually high-end database, allow the systems to access the data much faster in a very different way in order for us to grow other technologies for like AI into the levels that we're expecting them to be.
Agnes Budzyn, CEO and Managing Partner at Blue Edge Ventures, where she invests in digital infrastructure and dual-use technology applications across government and civilian sectors. She previously served as Managing Director at Decentralized, building the tools, infrastructure, and research that power Ethereum, and earlier advised global regulators during the financial crisis at BlackRock's Financial Markets Advisory Group.
You're also an investor in the space of blockchain and digital infrastructure. Which developments are you most excited about?
I am very bullish on.
Welcome, Agnes. You've worked at the heart of both traditional finance and also blockchain innovation. What convinced you that the future of finance is really in decentralized technologies?
Many people, when they look at blockchain or hear the word decentralized, they hear cryptocurrency and Bitcoin or Ethereum. But when you look at the technology, actually underlying technology, that is the most exciting part of it. I look at blockchain as a database of 21st or 22nd century, because when you look at the technology that we have right now and the progress that we're making with AI, blockchain, or any other technologies, we are very much overdue for actually high-end database that can not only capture and keep so much, data flowing through it, but also allow the systems to access the data, much faster in a very different way, which is decentralized way. There is so much data that we're producing that I think we should be looking at blockchain not as a version of cryptocurrency or some kind of, strange technology. It's purely a database that is very advanced.
And when you say it's a database, at its core, what problem does blockchain solve that existing systems can't?
So at first is, I think the way we're looking at the infrastructure right now, it will be we need to very much reshape it in order for us to grow any of the other technologies, for example, like AI, into the levels that we're expecting them to be. Research and development on AI started in 1950s, 1960s. So this is not just brand new technology. And the same it is with blockchain. At this point, blockchain is still in the very early stages of its, existence. And there's a lot of things to be built and to come. However, at this point, for example, the way how we should be looking at blockchain technology, for example, if you're a company or individual, you can store the data and you can be in charge of the data. You can own the data and you can allow third parties to see the sliver of the data that you want them to see. So for example, if you're a corporation XYZ, and for example, in the United States of America, you can do tax return. You have to do tax return. You have to deal with your regulators from SCC to OCC to everybody between it. Imagine if you are, JP Morgan, and you are able to say to every regulator, hey, here's your private key, and you are like regulating this piece of my business, go and take a look. Or we have to do XYZ, go and take a look, without sending tons of emails, messages, following up. So this is kind of a technology that can simplify a lot of things. Again, it is very early stage still, but that's the way we should be looking at it.
And another thing that comes up in the discussion around blockchain, you mentioned crypto a little bit. Other people are also talking about Web3 and describe it as the next phase of the internet. So in practical terms, what does that mean for businesses and for individuals?
I think in terms of Web3, we should be also looking at it. It will be a combination of internet as we know right now and how the internet is being run. I guess, what are the rails that the internet is running on, and how are we going to integrate the financial, money into this, and what kind of limitations, or maybe not no limitations. So I don't think, individual like you and I will really see any kind of major changes. For example, if Gmail is running on the blockchain. To be honest with you, we won't see it. But the way the infrastructure will be integrated, it will be much, much faster, more secure, more decentralized. And I guess the way we will see it as an end user will be much, much smoother to operate, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, it's an interesting example when you say Gmail operates on the blockchain, because this is something for me that I would not directly connect with the technology. I always associated with finance and other applications. And a lot of people talk about decentralized finance also in the Web3 space. Do you think that there's a lot of potential in this as well, or do you see other areas in which the potential is bigger?
When you're looking at decentralized finance, I think there's going to be a world where a lot of, I think the biggest disruption you'll see is in the space of stablecoins. Stablecoins that are being pegged to, let's say, US dollar, where you can see the system working much, much more efficient and with less, middlemen, and with better efficiency, and also with less borders. Because we, for example, in US or Europe, we are very lucky to have a very robust financial system. If I decided to send you $1,000, I can go to sleep because I know JP Morgan will deliver. But there are countries around the world where there is a very, very little transparency, where there is a very little access to, Western markets, dollar or euro. And I think that's where products like stablecoin can be very meaningful and can really change a lot of different economies.
Could you maybe explain a little bit to our audience, for those who may be unfamiliar with how the stablecoin works? So what does it do and how does it improve the process?
Stablecoin is pretty much digital dollar. It's a product that is pegged to US Treasury, for example, in US. And the way it works, it is digital currency that doesn't fluctuate. So if you get your salary in Turkish lira, if you convert your 1,000 Turkish lira at the dollar conversion rate into stable coin, that will become stable, but that becomes also a cryptocurrency. So you can go and use that cryptocurrency anywhere around the world. But it doesn't fluctuate the way Bitcoin or Ethereum does, because it's pegged to dollar, so it's stable. Is that good enough explanation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's very clear. So, and this also could be a good leeway to my next question, because I would be super interested in hearing your take on where you think that these two worlds might converge, right? We have the traditional finance system, and now we have the decentralized finance system. And what you're saying is basically that stablecoin, which is one of the applications, has the potential to change or maybe disrupt, how international transactions or transactions in general are being handled. So do you see that those two worlds are converging, or do you see that they develop in parallel to each other?
Actually, those two worlds are converging very, very deeply. And I've been looking at, I've been kind of thinking about it as you approached me with joining your podcast. And I was kind of thinking about it as I was kind of looking how the blockchain, cryptocurrency, stablecoin world has been developing. It's been getting closer and closer into traditional finance, and you see those two worlds getting very intertwined. But in reality, those worlds were supposed to be intertwined from the day one, given all these applications, especially for cryptocurrency and stablecoins. It was just a matter of time, and now actually it happened way faster than I expected. So
maybe when we take a different perspective on blockchain, so because it's a broad topic, right? Many companies are also thinking about how they can best approach blockchain and how they can best use blockchain. So from your experience, what are the biggest risks that companies underestimate when they are approaching the technology?
I think companies should be looking at this technology in exactly the same way as they are looking at any other technologies, from SaaS to AI to anything between it that has happened before or will happen next. You have to hire experts. I think the misconception about blockchain is that blockchain is some kind of a magical potion that it fixes world's problems or companies' problems, and that's definitely not it. Blockchain is a very specific, provides very specific solution for very specific problems. So as you are a large or small and mid-sized company, you need to determine if the applications of blockchain will obviously improve your bottom line and will improve your operations, your back office, your, removing some, multiple middle layers. You need to determine your own use case. And as you start looking at, integrating blockchain into your system, you need to hire experts, as you would with every single technology. And so that's what I would advise companies. Figure out a very, very defined problem that you're trying to solve, and then start, building applications to do that.
And could you maybe give examples for 2, 3 applications, use cases that you see could be particularly prominent?
So, for example, I think going back to blockchain being a database, I think it could be very valuable for a lot of companies to really have blockchain as a backup, database to run all their operations, risks, and any other records that may have on it. I think also any place where, for example, if you're dealing with cryptocurrency or if you want to get into the space of cryptocurrency, some companies went and issues ETFs, which was a very interesting way for them to get into the market. Some companies went and issued their own stablecoins to go and use that as a reconciliation mechanism between their global operations, which is another interesting applications. And some companies in the future will be using their stablecoin probably as a form of payment. So if you're a big bank and you are, like let's say like JP Morgan, and you have your own payment system, that would be very smart for you to actually use a stablecoin that can go around the world, and you don't have to do currency conversion between all the areas or all the users that you have.
Another thing that many people are talking about right now is tokenization. It's gaining a lot of momentum. What are the business models that executives should pay attention to in this space?
I would look at tokenization as a form of almost providing liquidity. So, for example, if you have any kind of illiquid investments like real estate or any other long-term illiquid funds, I think tokenization may allow you to inject some liquidity into, real estate funds or real estate projects by simply being able to, for an retail user to buy into, let's say, Plaza Hotel, because you can tokenize Plaza Hotel and you can sell token by token, or you can sell fraction of the token. So you can have investors that can invest $100 or $50 million. And I think that can open doors to accredited, not only accredited investors, but also retail investors having a greater access to investments that before weren't simply possible.
And And you're also an investor in the space of blockchain and digital infrastructure. Which developments are you most excited about from the investor perspective?
So from the investor perspective, I am very bullish on code-based infrastructure. So for me, blockchain, AI, and any other technology that will definitely come sooner than we think, I think it's very important. I think we always look at infrastructure as a bridges and roads and buildings, but we are living in this world where internet is a thing, and not only it's a thing, it's a huge thing of in our lives. We spend so much time on our iPhones with our applications, and from Gmail to anything between it, where I believe that we need to really put more emphasis and money into code-based infrastructure to make sure that our data is secure, our data is heavily encrypted, our data moves from point A to B fast, easy, and inexpensive. We have to make sure also that we constantly are looking at better ways of or improving our connectivity, because everybody talks about how AI is going to, take all of our jobs, but nobody talks about how much energy it will take to actually provide the computational power for that to happen. So we need to look at energy transitions. What are the other applications, for example, for data compression, where you are not using so much you won't need so much computational power to do all these magical things that AI is supposed to do or blockchain is supposed to do. So I believe that this kind of infrastructure is very, it requires a lot of investment, improvement, and constant development. So I am excited around, about those kind of applications.
Mm-hmm. And looking 10 years ahead, how do you imagine that blockchain will have changed our everyday life?
I don't think we would even know that our lives have been changed. I don't think we would even know that we are using blockchain or AI in our day-to-day applications, because as there is a very famous saying that sufficiently designed technology is pretty much you can't differentiate that from the magic. So we will be just magically things will be appearing on our screens. Things are going to be happening very seamlessly. We won't be thinking about, how to do this or that. All the technologies will be intertwined. They will be working together, and the end product will be our user experience will be seamless.
Okay, so that means it changes the way that we interact with the technology, because it's just a better experience for us. But from a customer perspective, there are not any new groundbreaking products coming to market, but it's more the companies that should care about the technology to make the end consumer products more seamless.
Yes. And, I think we will see some changes as we've seen in the era of internet, of how we are shopping, for example. You've seen as the internet developed, the way we're shopping, we're spending leisure time on what we're spending time on, and our money changed. And I think that will be continuing. The way we're going to be shopping will be I think it will not be fundamentally different. We will still go into websites, but they're going to be way more interactive. We will still spend money, but we will have a choice between cryptocurrency, digital coins, or just any kind of euros or dollars. I think that will still continue, but I think it will be done in a much more user friendly and much more deeper, I guess, interactive way. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking at your CV, you really have a fascinating CV. You've done so many different things. One of the most fascinating things I find is that you also, during the financial crisis, worked at BlackRock, and you advised many regulators, also managed a large portfolio there. So what did that experience of advising governments basically also during the financial crisis teach you about how financial systems work in times of stress?
So I think the best lesson I got was that we are financial global village, regardless if we want it to be or not. We are so intertwined with each other that it is when there is a little blimp in Asia or Latin America, everybody will feel it on some kind of in some kind of shape and form. So I think that was the most meaningful lesson I've seen, at least I received. It's we are intertwined, we are interdependent. It doesn't matter how big or how small the economies are, we are all together in it. And if something goes wrong or right, we will all feel it on some kind of scale.
Mm. And one thing that crises also do in the financial market or outside of the financial market is that they expose the weaknesses of the system. So, do you think that there are any kind of hidden risks that we're overlooking today, either in finance or in tech?
I think what we are I'm not sure if I want to use the word ignoring, but what I think we should pay more attention to is the impact that technology and talent has, and how that is linked to all the development, all the innovation, and all the you know risks and benefits that comes with. So I think we should constantly um, invest tremendous amount of money in not only innovation but also talent, and really nurture that, because you have to constantly innovate to stay ahead of and be able to spot all these risks and mitigate them. And for that, talent and innovation is the way to go.
Mhm. And having worked closely with regulators during the crisis, do you think, or how do you think global oversight for digital assets should look like?
So regulators are not a trendsetters. They are trend followers, and they are usually quite in the back. And that's their job. That's pretty much their entire job description. They are here to protect the consumer, and they are here to pretty much look at the new technologies, see how they develop, and then determine the right regulations. For example, in digital assets, I think there is a plenty of regulations in the financial world that could be that should be easily applicable to digital assets. And I think what the regulators, many of them are already doing, need to come up with, or need to implement a little bit more clear requirements. So if you are in the space of derivatives and you are using any kind of form of tokens or any kind of form of tokenization, you should be able to apply a lot of the laws and regulations that are regulating derivatives. If you are in a real estate space, that should be very similar. So I think there needs to be a push for a lot of clarity, but also simplification. And I think that's what will help also the cryptocurrency actually market grow faster and better.
Mhm. And you've worked in many high pressure environments, whether that's during the financial crisis or also building tech companies, and now as an investor also. How do you personally cope with stress?
Oh, that's an interesting question. You know what? It's not easy. You have to be almost you have to be wired a little bit differently, and you really have to focus relentlessly on the task ahead, and you need to continue, because it is very um, it is very difficult to deal with stress, and we have a multiple levels of stresses, from our personal family to to environmentals to your job. So I think focus, determining what's important, what's not, clarity, that's another thing, and making sure that you understand what are your limits. And you need to be okay when you hit your limit. You need to be very honest with yourself. Some people, can do more than others, but that doesn't really mean that somebody is better or worse. We all have our limits, and we all should be very aware of them, because if we are not, we will pay for it one way or the other.
Yeah, very true. But I think the challenge for many people is also to know their limit, right, and not push through. And this balance.
Yes, and it's very difficult to kind of look at it and admit that you hit the limit when we as a human beings constantly compare ourselves to everybody around us. And I think that's the biggest difficulty here. You kind of look at everybody else, you look at your peers, you look at your friends, your coworkers, and you're like, how do I admit that I hit my limit and I cannot go on 3 hours of sleep when other people do? And
Yes.
And I think that's very difficult. And I think it's also, we are in a society where we are told that being overworked and being overstretched and being burned out is some kind of a gold star. And it's not, because you see a lot of all the studies in the world show you that the more rested, the more sleep you get, the better your performance is. And I say that very often to my to the founders of the companies that I invest in. And I said to them, I'm like, I don't ever want to have a conversation with you when you come to me and tell me you made XYZ mistakes because you were burned out. This is absolutely not a way to go. And I encourage them and sometimes push them very hard to take vacations, to unplug, because for me, I can see the performance difference when they come back from 2 weeks of really just time with their family or even with their dog, and you can see how the energy changes. You can see how the innovation and how their brain just works differently and how much more excited they are. And that's what creates and shapes fascinating businesses and really innovative technologies. So everything is intertwined, and that influences your bottom line tremendously.
Yes, I agree 100%. So one interesting shift that you have made in your career is moving from Wall Street to the world of decentralized finance. Was there anything that you had to unlearn to make this transition?
Yes. So I went from a very traditional world of BlackRock to a very, very brand new and, magical technology of blockchain in 2016, 17, when pretty much nobody even knew what blockchain was. I had to re-examine and reset the way I frame things and how I think about things. So when I came to the blockchain world, I started looking at everything as pretty much an experiment, because everything was an experiment. There was only a white space. We couldn't really follow anybody's example. We couldn't really determine what our niche is, because there was only a white space there. So we had to pretty much do everything. So I had to kind of reframe the way I was looking at failure and success. I had to reframe at what I had to do in order to make things successful in the space that just started existing maybe 3 years ago. And very, very few people are there. So everything became experiment. Everything became a stepping stone. Everything became a learning lesson. And I think that was absolutely necessary when you are creating something out of pretty much nothing. So you have to look at every single opportunity as a pretty much opportunity to create and hopefully create something out of nothing.
And now you're an investor, and many investors are faced with the challenge to balance a long-term view of where the world will be in 5 to 10 years to short-term short-term hype cycles. How do you balance those two?
So I come again from a very traditional world of BlackRock. So I stick to my fundamental thesis. I have a fundamental thesis and I have a plan, and I relentlessly pretty much execute on it. I I always obviously I'm flexible, and I always pivot as things change and the market change and environments change, but the fundamentals are always there, because it doesn't matter if you're investing in the traditional real estate or pharmaceutical company or AI or blockchain companies. If you have a strong fundamentals, if you have a strong team, you will pretty much persevere and you will be a successful company. So that's how I'm looking at it. I still look at, all these magical things that are coming and being hyped up, and I dig deep into fundamentals and see what it shows me. I'm an accountant from education. I love numbers. I very deep into numbers, and that's what I stick to.
Perfect. Good advice, I think. And last question. We'd like to end the show on a positive note. So all guests basically get the same last question, which is, what makes you optimistic about the future?
I always say that I invest in people that are crazy enough to believe that they can change the world, and they are resilient enough to change the world. So every single morning I get up, I work and I talk to people who believe that they can make a huge change, regardless if it is in their industry or any kind of area, specific region, and they are extremely resilient. And they go through when you run a startup company, you pretty much almost live and die minute by minute, by market, by investors, by deliveries, by how great your product is or what you have to pivot. So you have to have a tremendous amount of resilience, and you have to be wired very differently to actually being a punching bag for the world, because everybody is always ready to tell you how you're doing everything wrong, how your product is not going to work, how you're not going to raise your next round, how the market is not there in the right space for you to do this. So these people constantly hear that, and they still are looking at the world and they are like, no, we're going to do this and we're going to succeed. So for me, the resilience is the most, not only fascinating, but the most hopeful thing I see. And the people that are going through this are, like I said, the most fascinating people in the world. So I have a huge hope in all these generations that are waking up in the morning and saying, we will be entrepreneurs, and we're going to go and change, this little sliver of the world, because we simply can.
Fantastic. Agnes, thank you so much for joining us on What's Next and for showing us the potential of blockchain, not only for business, but basically how it's going to change our societies and our lives in the future. And to our listeners, stay curious and join us again next time for What's Next.
Thank you so much for having me.